All right, Kimberly Motley is going to grace us with her wisdom. She's been our figurative punching bag for quite a while. Every time she opens her mouth, she makes Thomas Claire Binger look like F. Lee Bailey. I'm telling you, she is something else, and she's not going to miss this opportunity either. And of course, she's going to be grilled by MSNBC. Man, these questions are going to devastate her. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
All right. Take her away, Kimberly.
Kimberly Motley is a lawyer representing Gaige Grosskreutz. She's also an MSNBC legal analyst. Kimberly, thank you for joining me.
It's Grosskreutz.
I have so many questions, but I could only imagine right now that he took the stand, your client took the stand, and recognizing that both Kyle and he were there for very different reasons for the same event. One was an ally to Jacob Blake and what he had happened, and the other seemed to be the one that was protecting this idea that police brutality may have been okay.
Yeah, that's the way it went. Gaige Grosskreutz was there to protest the treatment of Jacob Blake, that really good dude who was beating up the cops and pulling out tasers and grabbing knives and trying to get into a car filled with children while a felony warrant was issued for his arrest. Such a great thing that Gage is doing there. And then, of course, Kyle, well, he was there because he was trying to demonstrate to everybody that police brutality is okay. Yeah. This is the interviewer. This is not the person receiving the questions. This is the interviewer.
What's your take on this?
Well, thank you for having me. Actually, my client, Gaige
Grosskreutz. You're his lawyer.
Went to Kenosha, Wisconsin, simply to serve as a medic. He provided medical services for both sides.
He went there to serve as a medic while he was carrying a gun. I don't mind that. But for some reason, your side seems to really despise the idea, even though your own client did it. I thought that you weren't supposed to need a gun if you're just being a medic. Medics are unarmed. I mean, you can't fix a wound with a Glock. Why would you be carrying one? Gee, maybe it has something to do with personal protection.
People that were pro-police, as well as people that were, protesting on behalf of Jacob Blake.
That's right. Gage was there helping both sides. He was there helping people who were pro-police, although I have a feeling there weren't that many of them injured. And he went there to help people who were protesting the shooting of Jacob Blake. Kyle didn't do both sides. He's only shown helping protesters.
So, I think that's the difference. And my client actually lived in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, further from Kenosha than Kyle. She doesn't tell you that. And also, he had no ties to Kenosha. Remember, it wasn't Kyle's community. But Gaige certainly didn't mind driving down from West Allis to go to the protests. That's okay with her. But Kyle crossed that state line. But Kyle has ties to the community. His father lives there. He had a job there. His best friend lives there. Gaige didn't have any ties to Kenosha at all. And yet, in her mind, Gaige certainly belonged there, but Kyle didn't.
Which is a significant difference.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I do want to ask you, one of the things that we found quite interesting was that there is an idea of charging Richardson with less charges.
Yeah, charging Richardson with less charges. Would it be too much to ask to actually know the name of the person that's being charged?
And that technically they could be charged separately, these two incidences of the shooting. Can you elaborate on that? And what's the likelihood?
Well, it's common, frankly, criminal practice for prosecutors to ask for lesser included jury instructions.
So that they can get a conviction. Innocence be damned. That's why they do it.
Once all the evidence has closed. So I know for a lot of people, they're looking at this as it being unusual practice, but actually it's very common practice for this to happen. And what that means is basically if the actions of the defendant meets the elements of a lesser included offense with the 6 felony charges, then a jury is supposed to also consider that as well. It's important for the viewers to keep in mind that there are 5 victims with regard to, the active shooter Rittenhouse's very, irresponsible and lethal actions that night.
See, there's Kyle, Dominique, Wendy, and Kyle's 2 sisters. Yeah, there were 5.
There's Richard McGinnis, who was the journalist that was out that night.
Oh, the one that screwed you when he was on the stand? That dude? I'm surprised you even speak his name anymore.
Anthony Huber, Joseph Rosenbaum, Gaige Grosskreutz, and also an unknown male who attempted to kick Rittenhouse to try to get try to protect the lives of others in the community.
Yeah, I bet 4 of those 5 have criminal backgrounds. I'd bet on it. There's one that doesn't, Richard McGinnis, but when he went on the stand, he seemed to support Kyle's actions more than your own clients.
So I think that's really, really important to know because we're sort of focused on, the 2 deceased members, Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum, as well as the sole survivor, as well as survivor Gaige Grosskreutz.
Oh, she said, as well as the sole survivor. So much for those other 2 guys being victims. Dropkick Man and Richard McGinnis. Those aren't survivors. So how are they victims?
But there are 2 additional victims in this situation.
That's super helpful clarification. Can you also speak a little bit, though, how the testimony of Kyle Rittenhouse, how did it strike you?
Gee, I wonder if she's going to say, oh, it was very genuine. Okay.
Well, frankly, I thought his testimony came, frankly, slightly inauthentic.
Slightly inauthentic? Well, then mostly authentic.
I thought that there was definitely things that he said that were inconsistent with the evidence. For instance, he stated that he did not re-rack his gun as relates to my client, Gage Grosskreutz. And there is video evidence and audio evidence that you can actually hear him re-racking his gun.
Well, wait, you can hear him re-racking his gun, but you said there was video evidence. Do you see him re-racking his gun? She didn't mention that. Frankly, I think she's full of shit.
And why is that significant? Essentially, that demonstrates to me that Mr. Rittenhouse actually pulled the trigger against my client twice. The only way you know that you have to re-rack your gun is if there's a jam or something happened or malfunction with your first pulling the trigger. So he turned his weapon on my client. He, I believe, pulled the trigger. He turned the weapon, re-racked it. And
I believe pulled the trigger. I thought that you knew he did.
And then pulled the trigger again. And thankfully, he didn't fatally shoot my client. But I think that's really, really important because
look how she's smiling. Yeah, she's lying. Watch.
Thankfully, he didn't fatally shoot my client. But I think that's really, really important because it shows his state of mind and the intent that he had that night.
A lot of attention has been made now to Judge Schroeder, and he seems to be stealing scenes. How is his conduct in the court? How can that potentially implicate the outcome of this court and this jury?
Well, I mean, I think some of the rulings that the judge has given I found very questionable. I don't agree with some of the things that he has, said. Obviously, I'm biased. I represent 2 of the victims. And so, I wish that some of his rulings were, frankly, more for the prosecution, who I think for not just for, society and for my clients, it's important that Rittenhouse is convicted. But
yeah, so in other words, I really wish that he would have ruled against the defense so we could get Kyle convicted. That's her standard. A ruling is fair if it allows the prosecution to convict the defendant.
But at the end of the day, he's the judge on this case. He's the one that decides on, the difference, calling my client a victim or not calling him a victim within the court of law. Although legally, the reason why I'm there and I'm recognized in court as his attorney is because legally he's recognized as a victim in the state of Wisconsin. So, you have to.
Not in the courtroom, he's not. Thank God for that. That should be a rule everywhere. There's a lot of things that you might be able to say outside the courthouse, but you're not allowed to say in front of a jury. Just because something is legal doesn't mean you can present it to the jury. But she'll never figure that out. She has no way of knowing. Not her fault. It's her background, her education.
To deal with the judge that you're dealt, and I think that he's been quite hard on the prosecutor.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why. Let's see here. The prosecutor only violates one of the most basic tenets of justice in this country by making it appear to the jury that Kyle had something to hide by invoking his Fifth Amendment right. Gee, we don't allow that in this country, and that was blatant. Then he tried to introduce evidence before it had been ruled admissible, and which he knew was not going to be admissible. The judge got really pissed off at him. Frankly, I would have thrown his ass in jail.
I think there's some questionable things that his actions that he's done in front of the jurors and in terms of his language to the prosecutor, him yelling at the prosecutor. I don't think that that's appropriate. It seems quite biased at times.
She said some of the things he's done in front of the jury, like yelling at the prosecutor. No, the jury wasn't in the room at that time.
But at the end of the day, he's the judge. So you have to deal with what you have.
Well, there you go. These tough questions that were thrown her way, and the way she handled them. Man, she's good. What can you say? Like my video, subscribe to my channel, and never hire her.